G'day fans and welcome back to another exciting episode of Talking Stuff. Guess what? The lad is back after having a slacking off week last week. And I tell you what, fans, what is the deal with the weather? It is cold enough to freeze a squirrel's nuts. I tell you what there. Mr. Aaron, good to see you're feeling better. How's it all going, old son?
I just think we've got the Weathertron set to 0 just so people will stay in and watch us. Yes, feeling much better this week. Was not having a good week last week, but Jethro did a great job of filling in for me, so thanks for that, mate.
Well, it's very funny you should mention that. Jeffro did such a fantastic job that the moment he was finished, he buggered off out of the country and is now in New Zealand. And we're going to cover that off in a couple of minutes' time, which is a very, very groovy. Christy's joined us. G'day, geeks and nerds. I tell you what, on a cold night like tonight, if you're not watching the Star Walking podcast about the Acolyte, which came out yesterday, at least you're watching us, which is the most important thing because we're going to be discussing all sorts of very groovy and exciting things. But the most exciting thing of all, Mr. Aaron, is we're going to be creating and pitching our own Star Wars TV show, which is coming up in a few minutes' time. How exciting is that? I mean, I don't know about you, but I was certainly feeling the force when the ideas were like flowing through me.
I know, and if the Star Walking podcast is on, it means that Judas Moneybags will be watching that, not us. So we won't have him trying to chime in with his stupid ideas.
Well, it's very funny. We had a couple of people joining us live. As soon as I mentioned there's another podcast on, they just left us, and so we dropped down, but we've come back again. So it is all good. Look at that. We want Jeffro. Good to see you back, Aaron. There you go. Yes, last week before I actually finished the show, was saying, hey, who do we vote off, you or Jeffro? And someone actually suggested vote me off, and I go, yep, I'll vote to that. So
we're playing. We're all on Slug Island.
We're all on Slug Island. Exactly right. Mr. Shane has joined us, which is absolutely fantastic. Here we are all the way from New Zealand. Greetings from the Tillies. Absolutely awesome. Well, it's very funny we should mention Jeffro because we're going to kick this off straight away. So as I said, last week he was on the show. He filled in for you, did an awesome job. And then as soon as we hung up the broadcast, he buggered off out of the country and he's headed off to New Zealand because this is there, the Docky Who Worlds of Wonder. And I thought, how exciting is this, Mr. Aaron? If you're a Docky Who dude, you'd be positively foaming at the mouth over this. Is that right?
I mean, New Zealand must be really getting tight for tourist attractions if they're crowbarring in Doctor Who events. I mean, you've got your Wedder, you've got your Lord of your Rings, and they're trying to get Doctor Who as well.
It's a bit of a come down, I guess. Maybe it's the equivalent of the Broadmeadows version of tourist attractions. Oh, Greg's loving it, me Docky Who. Jeffro's over in New Zealand at the moment, and he sent through some pictures today of the exhibition. First things first, I'm surprised that you haven't just gotten your tickets and nicked off to New Zealand to go along and check it out yourself, Mr. Aaron. What's the deal with that?
I've been, but I saw it I saw it when it was in Wales, and a lot of the stuff from this, there was a much bigger one that was a permanent exhibition in Wales, and I went to it a few years ago, and I guess the only thing in this one that I haven't seen is a couple of things from the latest series. But you never know, I might pop over. You never know if they get a cheap flight or some frequent flyer points.
But isn't the idea as soon as something pops up you haven't seen before, you got to go? It's like seeing an extra 5 seconds of a special edition of a movie or something like that. Oh, got to go and see it because there's extra bits in it. But yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, it would be an amazing experience to go to. But at the moment, I haven't planned it. Like there's Armageddon there with a few Doctor Who guests, and if I was going to do it, you'd go over, see the Doctor Who guests, do the Doctor Who exhibition, go to Wedder, see the Hobbits and the new Unit Scientific Advisor, the Oompa Loompa, and then you would be able to kind of do all that, the Wedder workshop as well. You'd be able to do all that sort of nerd stuff at the one time, which I think would be a pretty good holiday.
I'm going to say you sound like a tourist person for New Zealand. Rusky Babes has said, Jeff's World, absolutely. Now, what do you reckon of this Doctor Who exhibition? It's the Wobby's World version of the Doctor Who experience. Cop that, if you don't mind, umpire. That's a bit harsh, isn't it?
Well, for those who don't know, Wobby's World was like a very unique, eclectic Australian theme park. It sort of goes Disneyland, Warner's on the Gold Coast, Wet and Wild, Wobby's World.
Yes, it wasn't exactly like that one. Certainly didn't bring in the tourists, but I want to tell you one tourist who's taken a good run around the old Docky Who exhibition. And it's Jeffro with the old TARDIS console. How excited is this? What do you reckon, Mr. Aaron? Is this enough to make you want to just go? Is your TARDIS groaning right about now?
I reckon that's a man that looks like he's about to fiddle with some knobs. But again, that's That's one of the original TARDIS consoles. I think that was actually the one that was made for Adventures in Space and Time, which was a docudrama to do with the first Doctor in the 60s era of Doctor Who. So it's a really amazing, accurate recreation of the original TARDIS console. So amazing to see.
Very cool. Next to Wobby's World, of course, as you said, sorry, is Gone By a Park, which is absolutely fantastic. We should do a Wobby's World exhibition for a Wobby's Who exhibition for a stir. Yes, exactly right. Very, very cool. There's also, he took a photograph of all these weapons and sonic screwdrivers. What's the big thing at the top, the big long thing? What's that?
It looks like a sonic cane, I think. I could be wrong. It could be the first Doctor's cane. But I know there has been sonic canes in one of the episodes, and it could be that, especially with it. It would make sense because it's lumped in with all the sonic screwdrivers.
A sonic cane. Oh, okay, there you go. Oh, very, very cool. Yeah, I like this. Jeffro's making a wheezing, groaning sound, probably because we're hanging shit on his exhibition visit. Once again, what's the thing at the top?
I don't know.
Okay.
I can't tell from that picture what it is. They've obviously got a lot of props. I think there's the sonic sunglasses that Peter Capaldi had there, and a couple of the other sonic devices, and the wristwatch. I can't tell what that one is at the top. It looks almost like a umbrella or something. But,
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
no,
A Dutch umbrella of some sort. Yeah.
It looks like a collection of Time Lord sonic devices. It's some kind of umbrella or vibrator or something like that.
Good on you. This thing here, it looks like when the Doctor was doing some gardening in the backyard, it looks like a little digger thing.
It does.
No, there you go.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Umbrella.
Jeffro said it's lights. Okay, very, very cool. Actually, what's funny about these photos we just saw just then, when Jeffro put them on Facebook, he put him in upside down. So luckily, smart me thought, hang on, those lights, that's all about ass about, and I had to turn it upside down, Miss Jane. And yeah, it was particularly cool. All right, okay, you didn't know what the umbrella was and the trench tool, digging thing, whatever, the trowel, whatever it's called. But these things you'll definitely recognise. They are particularly groovy. You got a bit of canine action there and your robot and whatever else, mate.
Yeah, you've got one of the canines. I don't know if it's screen used or if they've just done props. The robot is definitely the screen used original. That goes around to exhibitions and is always one of the highlights that people want to see. That's getting quite old now, and I still think it looks amazing and futuristic. That's from, the early 70s. And then you've got the Skonos Blixer from Peter Capaldi's era. So they've really mixed up the eras there. And then it looks like some, are they cyber heads or different
I'll be
villains'
showing
heads?
those in a sec. With the robot thing was just called Robot, wasn't it? Didn't have a name, did it?
It was the Kettlewell K1 robot.
Oh, gee, could have just said it was the robot. Was a person inside that? I can't tell.
No, it's a real robot, Dags. They actually had to.
Yeah,
it was Michael Kilgary, who was also the cyber leader, played the giant robot.
Yeah, I could give you the finger, but I can't blur it out because we're live. But there you go. Jeffro said it's all screen used, which would make a lot of sense from my perspective. The K9, they probably would have had a few K9s in their troubles. But that is actually very, very groovy. I like the fact you knew what this thingoid was. And I go, yeah, look at you, show off your smart ass bloody knowledge.
Well, I'm a Doctor Who fan. Come on, if I didn't know.
Riff, yeah. Yeah, well, exactly right.
I got it wrong. I've been corrected by a former president of the Doctor Who Club of Victoria, and it wasn't Phil Nichols. So
I was going to say, I've heard some of those Doctor Who fan club presidents. They're pretty cool dudes, So don't mix with that. Don't run to those guys in a dark alley.
So there's some really cool heads there because again, it embraces all the different eras of the show, and you've got one of the hosts from the last voyage of the Titanic with the halo there. Then you've got I think it's a Supervoc robot from Robots of Death. I think that's the Supervoc version. And then you've got one of the Clockwork droid face masks. You've got one of the new Cybermen. It could be Handles, the Doctor's friend who traveled with him in the TARDIS as a cyberhead. And then it's got one of the Clockwork droids from the Peter Capaldi episode, the second time they appear, the sort of clear head, I think. Jeff will probably be able to correct me if I'm wrong with those, but there's some amazing props there that spanned, all different, eras of the show.
I like how you said you think, mate, that is just not acceptable. Yeah, I looked at that and I go, what is that? And now I thought you might know, but you got no freaking idea, so you're absolutely useless to me. So caught yourself in something.
I'll tell you what, Dags, you can do the descriptions then.
All right, I will. All right, so this is a silver-headed dude. And he's got mean
And the
looking
best
eyes, and you know what? He's actually staring at the camera, looking at you, Aaron, thinking, "How did you not know what that freaking head was in the last picture?"
and the best thing about that, someone's got hold of him with the bedazzler and put all these gemstones around him. But that's the Supervoc robot we saw before, which is a very cool piece. I actually thought that head belonged to Dallas Jones.
Oh, good on you. Supervoc, great name for a fanzine. Totally agree with you, which is a very, very groovy. Yes, cool stuff. I have no idea what these things are.
Well, the one
Obviously.
on the left is Omega, one of the original Time Lords that helped Rassilon create time travel. That's the 80s version of him. The one on the right, I think, is from an episode called Hyde. I'm not quite sure from the picture if it is the alien from Hyde, which was, I don't think they even gave it a name. It was just some sort of very ugly creature, but it looks like that to me, but it didn't really stand upright in the episode. It really went around on all fours. So I'm taking a guess on that one.
The one on the right, I look at this head way up here, and I go, that reminds me of The Thing. You know how it sort of like takes over people and makes a mess of everything. So, here we go. Karen said the one on the right looks like my ex when she gets angry. Now we know why she's the ex. Yes, exactly right. Very, very cool. God, I looked at this and I thought, this is from 2010 and all these other sci-fi space movies.
Now I'm wondering what his ex looks like when she's not angry. So there is a few different spaceship spacesuits there. The red one on the right is used in various episodes, I think. I do think the last one was the Spiders on the Moon from the Capaldi era. They might have used it in the Jodie Whittaker series as well, actually, Prisoner of the Jadoon. The next one along coming towards you, Dags, is from Silence in the Library, and it's sort of the Vashta Narada. I think it's River Song's suit in the one that looks like the traditional just spacesuit there, and I'm not quite sure what the black one on the end is. So that one's got me stumped.
Two things, or three things. Jeffro said the height is correct. When we first put that picture up, you just said, and yes, we've got a whole lot of spacesuits there. I could have said that, right?
Yes.
You're having to go at me for not being able to pronounce this stuff, but then you redeemed yourself saying, this is from that, this is from that. You could be making it up as far as I'm concerned, but it's like, okay, you redeemed yourself, because initially when you said there's a bunch of spacesuits, I thought, dude, I just... Oh, dear. But you did it right in the end. You sort of saved the day. So very, very cool. BBC got good value out of the spacesuits. They're all recycled. Absolutely no doubt at all. Red one is 42 and Satan Pit. Oh, well, there you go. How about that, mate?
No, I'm pretty sure. I'm going to go for a correction there. I'm pretty sure it was the orange one in 42 and the Satan Pit, and they changed it to the red one later on.
Just stop. Because guess what? We have one of these.
We've got a boner.
We got a boner. So what? All right, now explain what you just said.
So I'm pretty sure Kelvin's right. There is a very similar spacesuit they've used, but I was pretty sure it was the orange one in the Satan Pit, and what was the other episode 42, and it changed to a red one later. I could be wrong. Could be red in one and orange in the other. Red was 42, orange was Satan Pit, but I do think Jodie wore the red one. I think in Prisoner of the Jadoon it came back. Like everyone who's just turned in is getting nerded out now about Doctor Who stories, and of course the one I couldn't think of was Oxygen.
Right. Yeah, that was mentioned up. Shane also mentioned Oxygen. You got to get with the program, man. Anyway, I'm moving on from the spacesuits, right? Yeah, they look good. They're great. Okay, at least we know what this is. TARDIS, fantastic.
I know what that is. That's a shed.
Yeah, it's a shed. Oh, dear. Didn't Star Wars reuse Doctor Who spacesuits? Yeah, they did, especially for, what's his name? Bosk was one of them.
They
I
did.
know that. Now, Here's a question for you. I showed this picture to my other half, and I said, what's missing from this picture? And I'm asking you.
What's like
very quick?
People looking, or
yes, there's no audience, there's no crowd. Yeah. It's very funny. My other half was saying, "Yeah, exactly right." I said, "Where is everybody?" And I asked Jeffro. I said, Is this? So what's happened to the exhibition? No one's turned up for it. He said they got there first thing in the morning, and it was a weekday, so that probably explains why the place was empty.
Jeffro has this trick for always having no one at the exhibition with him. He just doesn't wear deodorant for his entire trip.
Yeah. I mean, how often do you ever go to an exhibition and there's 50 billion people in front of you, and you're trying to get out of the way, get pictures. I mean, look at that. There was freaking nobody there at all. So that is absolutely awesome. So you
You've
didn't have
got
to
to,
digitally remove them or anything. So,
Dave, you've
yeah.
got to remember, it's a Doctor Who exhibition.
And it's in New Zealand. Oh, dear. Unbelievable. Very, very cool. I've got a couple more things to go. I
Yep,
recognize
there's
the
some
thing on the
cool-
right. That's a Legend of
You're
the
right.
Sea Devil on the right-hand side.
Oh, look at you. You sound like a nerd. Yeah, I thought you would have actually mentally blocked that out of your head, but you've got the Legend of the Sea Devils, a Silurian, a modern and old one. You've got like a Sontaran, and then you've got the creatures from Orphan 653 or whatever it was. We forgot that one. All we have to say is Benny, I guess. And it looks like something's crawling down at the back. I can't quite tell if it's a giant spider or something else, but quite a cool exhibition. Some really cool costumes there.
Yeah, very, very cool.
And then we've got a mirror, because the scariest monster of all is when the Doctor Who fan sees himself. And then you've got like you got an Ice Warrior. The one I think that's the Ice Warrior and the Empress of the Ice Warriors. She unallowed inside. You can't
Actually,
see
yeah, it's one right there.
but you can see the meat. The meat is for the sheep, and then you've got one of the Weeping Angels there as well. So there's some classic monsters there.
Corana's asked, is this exhibition coming to Melbourne? I'm assuming not. I think it's been here already, hasn't it?
No, they've actually said it won't come to Australia, but I do think, again, that's the New Zealand Tourist Bureau trying to drum up people going there. Do you remember that whole, you've got to come to Sydney to see the Star Wars exhibition, because absolutely no way is it going to Melbourne, and we all flew up there, and then 6 months later it's down in Melbourne.
Yeah, no, exactly right. So, yeah, we're not cool enough as it is, as you said. So there you go. Got some more heads, mate.
Yeah, like, there's a collection of heads there. I can identify some of them. Some of them are a little bit small and I can't tell. But, there's the Dalek pig guards and the zombies from Wars of Mars. I can't tell quite what's on the bottom. So maybe if I put full screen instead of squinting, that'd actually help, wouldn't it? Yeah. So we've got an Ood, of course, up the top, and we've got Jabe, one of the tree people. I think we've got a space crab in a jar at the bottom, and we've got one of the Whispermen in the top hat down the bottom there too. Either that or they've decapitated Marcel Marceau.
Very cool. Will's joined us. Doctor Who, I believe, is the longest running series besides Star Trek TV series. It's a franchise. No, is the answer. I think Coronation Street or Days of Our Lives or one of those.
Coronation Street.
Hang on. You got to remember, there's a difference between something that's continued without breaking its stride, and because Doctor Who obviously had a big gap for like a dozen years or so. So, but in terms of a franchise, yeah, science fiction franchise, yes, it is. So, yeah.
And the second one is not Star Trek. The second longest unbroken one is Stargate.
Oh, unbroken one. Yeah, I suppose that would make sense. Yep, fair call. Very groovy. 2 pictures left. There's Jeffro with the Weeping Angel. You know why she's weeping? Because Jeffro's in the picture, which is particularly cool.
And he's got his arms up, releasing the Jeffro odor.
Yeah, I like the gumboot-free exhibition. Yeah, right. And Kelvin said he's off there, which is very, very cool. Very good, and we'll see. Now it's interesting. Hopefully, that's informative, interesting, not just boring, interesting. Now this is an important picture. This is the last picture. I found out. Right, here we go, fans. One of these is a large, strong mega beast, which is fed across the unknown universe, and the other is an ice warrior. How good is that? Now, before you say anything, how did I know it was an ice warrior? Well, guess what? I didn't. I had to Google Doctor Who green alien, and I get all these other bloody things that go, what the friggin' hell is this big green puppy? And eventually, after a shit, like rephrasing it a dozen times, I got ice warrior, and I go, how good am I?
Well done, Dad. Well done.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, so it was a good exhibition. Look, I think it's, if you're a Doctor Who fan, it's obviously more classic than anything else, and yeah, which is very, very groovy. So, oh, look at this. Jeffro's Ice Warriors cosplay accurate gut. Oh, dude, that's a bit harsh, isn't it? Unbelievable.
Do you know what they? Do you know what they haven't got in the exhibition? They haven't got the Crinoid. Crinoid is the best Doctor Who monster. And, if they haven't got the official one, Greg King should go across in his Crinoid costume and run around terrorizing the exhibition patrons if he gets a chance to go across.
Well, I wouldn't be too harsh because Jeffro sent me some pictures and there's a couple I didn't include. So there might be things there that we didn't actually see. So, yeah, it might all be pretty good stuff. Anyway, so that's the Doctor Who exhibition. If you are in New Zealand, check it out. I'm sure it's great and wonderful and absolutely fantastic. Crinoids in Bendigo, exactly right. Okay, guess what? That's the end of the Docu Who. Out the window, done, dusted. All right, now it's time for something more serious, right? So a lot of people have been criticizing about the whole Star Wars thing at the moment. You know, the Star Wars acolytes sort of kind of work and not work, and a few of the TV series have kind of worked, not work, blah, 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 blah. A lot of unhappy Star Wars fans in the world. And as we know, no one hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. So Aaron suggested, why don't we create a show and pitch it to Lucasfilm/Disney and see how we go, right? Do it seriously, no mucking. What are you laughing for? Do it seriously, no mucking around, right? Now, we put our heads together. In other words, Aaron did all the work. And guess what? We've actually got a pitch. Now, you're going to remember, with the pitch, you speak to a producer, you just pump it out, all out in 2 minutes, right? You don't spend there 4 hours gas bagging about it. You got to sell it. Sell straight away. So Aaron absolutely did some fantastic work, and we've come up with a new TV series for Star Wars. And guess what it's called, fans? It's called Heroes of the Empire. It's even got a release date and everything, end of this year, right? Which is absolutely fantastic.
It's released on my birthday.
What are the chances of that? All right, so and Jeffro said there's no crinoid there. So okay, well, I'll just shut up now. All right, so fans, now you can comment on this and tell us what you think of this particular pitch. Right now, this is pretty serious. And we might actually formulate it, send it off overseas, and see if we get a response, because we're taking a completely different tack away from the Jedis and all this other rubbish. We're focusing on the heroes of the Empire, and this is the prime guts of it. I'll read it out to you. Okay, so this is what it's all about. Okay. The galaxy balances on the precipice. Actually, I'll do it in the fancy voice. The galaxy balances on the precipice. Emperor Palpatine has ended the Clone Wars and ushered in a new era of peace. But his fledgling empire is threatened. The Trade Federation, seeking vengeance for his betrayal, has already struck in the outer systems. Key to defending the newly won peace are the elite TIE fighter pilots. They are the heroes of the Empire. Now, that to me sounds like a show worth watching. What do you reckon? I know you just come up with it, but what do you reckon there, Mr. Aaron? Do you reckon that'd be the kind of show you go, forget your acolytes and Obi-Wans and Boba Fett's and all that other tripe? Heroes of the Empire. Do you reckon that's a winner?
Well, yes, I'm ripping it off. It's the Top Gun of Star Wars franchise. So no Jedi in it, no Sith or anything. We're actually looking just at the military part of the Empire at the beginning of the Empire. The rise of the Empire, and we're actually treating the Empire as good guys. So everyone in this show thinks they're doing the right thing, thinks they're, patrolling the galaxy for peace, and it's all about egos and who gets the girl and who's the top ace TIE fighter pilot. So it's a totally different version of Star Wars, one we haven't seen, but one that fits squarely in the Imperial sort of Star Wars universe.
Totally agree with you. And before I go on to the next bit, Kelvin said, in this day and age, the Empire are the good guys. Well, yeah, especially at the moment they are. Christy said they're retconning the villains as misunderstood heroes. This might work. Come on, Christy, I want a bit of optimism here. Not might work. It sounds like a fantastic thing. Sounds like a bit like the TIE Fighter computer game. Irrelevant, because that was a game. We're talking about an actual TV series, live action TV series, right? Rogue Squadron is the Top Gun of Star Wars. Rogue Squadron doesn't exist, but heroes of the Empire might. Now, you want to know a bit more, fans out there. I know you're chomping at the bit to learn a bit more about what the story's about, right? Now we're going to tell you. Follow the light. I can't do it. Follow the lives of elite pilots in the Imperial Navy, where honor, duty, and egos clash, but never interfere with completing the mission and earning them the status of heroes of the Empire. Why am I there?
Because you're my Iceman to my Goose. You're my wingman, Dags. And when I was putting this together, I thought, who would be more heroic and who could be? And I just thought all the qualities that you have.
Unbelievable. So yes. So clearly it's already been cast. Right now, there's a bit more. So you're thinking, what?
Dags,
go on.
Do you know why this costs so much? The de-aging budget on you.
Very good point there. All right, so there you go. All right. All right, so you can learn a bit more of the characters. We've got two lead characters, the male and the female, right? One of them just, for some reason, looks like me. Right. Okay. All right, there's a bit of text. I've got to read it out, but it's going to sound good. Okay, guys, work with us here.
Okay.
Heroes of the Empire sounds like a winner. Okay, here we go. Right. Maxwell Dags Dagmar, Top Gun and flight instructor to many batches of elite clones, Commander Dagmar is now right-hand man to Moff Kremen, which orders to destroy the last pockets of resistance from the Trade Federation and their Techno-Union allies. Capture as many as their weapon construction facilities and annex them onto the Empire's glowing security force initiative. Brash, self-confident, with a mouth that can talk his way out of tense situation as fast as he can talk himself into one. Sounds like that now. Dags is as good a pilot as a covert operative and is highly decorated after leading so many successful missions to secure safety and peace. This makes him one of the true heroes of the Empire. What do you reckon, fans? Do you reckon that's a hard sell or what?
I think this character sounds better than Han Solo.
Oh, dear, Starship Troopers of the Empire, exactly right. Bugs. Oh, Colin likes it at least. Oh my goodness. All right, so the secondary character. All right. Oh dear. What's your place or mine? Look, yeah, exactly right. Premise the But we've still got one more character we're going to get through. All right, so there you go, fans. All right, this is important. Okay, I got to try and focus because it's hard to do this. All right, so this is the other character, which Dags Dagmar is going to be sparring off against. Saoirse Brightburn, daughter of the, I can't even pronounce that, Archimandrite of Werribee Prime. Saoirse saw her family being seduced by the Jedi in the last days of the Old Republic, leaving her old life and enlisting with the Galactic Empire rather than living as a traitor. Saoirse is fiercely loyal to her ideals and the idea of fighting for a better way of life. An elite pilot and a strikingly beautiful woman. I noticed she didn't say I was a handsome guy, but we'll just move on from there. She often clashes with Commander Dagmar on how is the best way to achieve their objectives. Initially having an abrasive relationship with Dags, they learn to have a mutual respect for each other, and there are hints of something more in the future. Her skills as a TIE fighter ace and loyalty to her friends make her a favorite amongst her comrades and a valued hero of the Empire. And my first question is, does the guy get the girl at the end of the episode?
only if Disney commissions Series 2.
Oh, there you go. So how about that, fans? I love it. Werribee Prime is that galactic sewage plant.
The great thing about that, you could use Werribee Prime and it'd go down well in America, but everyone in Australia would know what we're talking about.
See, this is what I like, right? This is the optimism. Please pitch this to Disney if they have to option this. Heroes of the Empire. It sounds like a winner right across the board. How could you say that's not going to work? Oh, I like it, Colin. What happens to the TIE fighter stays in the TIE fighter? Oh, jeez. Hang on. Can we really say that ChatGPT didn't write? No, it was all out of Aaron's head. He conjured it up today, in fact. How good was that?
Yeah. I haven't got Dags' reaction to it. I know it's a little bit funny. What do you think, though, Dags?
Look, I actually, in all seriousness, yes, I think a series based around something to do with the Imperials would be worth a try. We've been through all the shitloads of good guys. Try something different. Do something left field and give it a go and just see if it gains an audience, because for the most part, you never really see that much regarding the Imperials and who they are and what their lives are like. And without making them too soppy and making them too much like, well, we hate the Empire, we love the good guys, make them actually committed to their missions. I reckon it'd be kind of cool. That, and it was mentioned earlier by Greg about TIE Fighter, the game. I mean, that was one of the things. You actually work for the bad guys. And but they believed in everything that they fought for. So, yeah, very cool.
From a certain point of view, the rebels are terrorists.
Yes, exactly right, which we've covered off before. And that's exactly true. Will said, I've heard George Lucas has been involved in another Star Wars project. No, he is gone. Everybody needs to learn. George has got his money and has bailed out of Dodge. So that is that. The Young Thrawn Adventures. Yeah, well, exactly right. There's obviously been a desire for Knights of the Old Republic to be made as a TV show for decades, but I don't think that's going to have happen. But anyway, look, it was a bit of fun. It was a bit of shits and giggles. It's funny. I mean, all the series keep coming out, and Acolyte kind of hasn't worked for some people, and for whatever reason, it's just not really excuse me, set the world on fire, which is really unfortunate considering where it's set. So, but for us to come up with or for Aaron primarily to come up with a crazy idea that some people go, you know what, take all the silliness out of it. It could actually work. Heroes of the Empire. You never know. What do you reckon, dude?
Well, I'm waiting for my first Disney paycheck. I'll take 22 million, please.
In Mickey dollars, yes, exactly right. Very cool. And the funny thing is, if we see heroestheempire.com get registered tomorrow and somebody's got the whole series, we go, hey, you plagiarized. I can't say us, plagiarized you.
the only trouble, you know if it's really Disney because Dagmar becomes a gay character.
I was going to say, if he pops up on screen, Maxwell Dagmar going, hey, that's... he'd probably be an alien with like freaking scales sticking out of his head or something stupid like that. Where a Sorcerer is just going to look attractive no matter what. And go, hang on, what's wrong with this picture here, fan? So,
well, that's the thing. That's the really good thing about, if they did an Imperial one, it would mainly be humans, because the Empire really didn't go for diversity and hiring aliens. So you could have more of a grounded, serious show. I don't know, though. Anyway, asked to pitch a show. That's what I came up with. Gave it a day. I thought it was good.
Yeah. Well, as it is, Maxwell Dagmar wouldn't be like me, because as we know, currently male Caucasian actors who are heterosexual are kind of off the table a bit regarding Disney Star Wars shows. So we move on.
What? Like, Tom Cruise, because he's in the we're not quite sure zone.
There you go. Very cool. All right. So that was all good fun, right? So much so we're on time now. It's time for a little bit of this.
A question.
All right. Take a moment to just take a breather on that one. Whew, very good. All right. I've got a question for you, dude. I'm going to chuck this one out there and see how what you think of it. All right. So the question that I'm going to be posing to you this evening: Battlestar Galactica, the 1978 version, so there's no confusion, could it have become a massive global franchise to equal Star Wars if it hadn't been cancelled? And of course, Battlestar only went for one season in 1978, and after that, it all went kind of downhill. But had it kept going, regardless of the cost and whatever else, could it have been like the bee's knees of shows to rival Star Wars?
Yes, absolutely, it could have been. And I think Battlestar Galactica's downfall was a couple of things. It was the cost to produce it. It was the network executives that wouldn't get off Glenn A. Larson's back. And apparently from the second week after they showed the pilot, they kept saying, when are they going to find Earth? When are they going to find Earth? And the whole thing is, it's not about them finding Earth, because it's about the journey, not the destination. The trouble with the original Battlestar Galactica is the episodes that are fantastic are absolutely fantastic. The production values probably were the best production values of anything on television at the time. You could watch that, and that was like watching something that had a cinema budget. The flip side of that is when they had the cheap episodes, they were some of the worst sort of villain of the week, crap, cliched. We land in a space western because we've got the sets on the backlot of Universal Studios, so we can do this cheap episode. So I think Battlestar Galactica had it good. I mean, it had a letter writing campaign to keep going, like like Star Trek. And they got Galactica 80 off the ground kind of because of that. But I think it really needed one more season, and it would have blossomed into a multi-billion-dollar franchise. I mean, it's not like it's done bad. It's come back. But the original, I think, could have done a lot better than it did if there'd been a bit more care put into it.
So the first thing about you saying, like they used the Western set because it already existed. Even in Star Trek, they used existing sets and locations because they already had them. So they were able to work stories in that sort of fit the time frame. And people said, yeah, that's fine. We take it on the chin. Now, this is an interesting one from Shane. And Battlestar, it's a bit too limited in its premise. A quest series is tricky. But having said that, if you look at Star Trek Voyager, their quest is to return back to the Federation, and they have all these side journeys along the way. So there's nothing to say that couldn't occur as well. You have to think outside the box a little bit, but it could certainly work. And we're just ignoring things like Galactica 80 in the reboot series and whatever. We're just saying if the original series had kept going, because I'm doing some stuff regarding Battlestar at the moment, and I was rewatching some of the material. And I think for the mid to late 1970s, it was really ahead of its time. Visually, it was stunning. It really was. Even if, you could argue that, as was mentioned here, they were using a lot of their visual effects every time. It depends on what it was aimed at, because if the target market was 10-year-olds, as was Star Wars, he didn't care about stuff like that. And I think it kind of worked. And I think it's unfortunate that it kind of stopped and was cancelled. But had it kept going, I knew second season, they may have revamped it a little bit and sort of like changed a few things and really pushed it in a really interesting direction. It's almost like a scenario of what could have been. And of course, by the time Galactic Get Ready came around, they cut the budget and changed the story. And the whole thing was a dog's breakfast. So
with the reusing effects, you've also got to remember it was at a time where there was, very limited video at the beginning of the 80s and the end of the 70s. And when you saw something weekly, it isn't so apparent when they use the effects over and over. As a kid, I never realized they reused the effects. But I do remember one thing, which as a kid is really weird that you pick up. They even reused the effects that were on the computer screens. Yes, and they would use the computer layout where Zach died from the original one in multiple episodes. And I'd be like, and so you'd see a formation of ships, and it worked in the first episode because that's what it was made for. But then it never matched up. And I'd always, as a kid, go, isn't that when Zach died? Because that was quite traumatic for me, a main character dying on screen. Anyway, that digressed. But yeah.
I know what you're saying, because you'd end up with like one Viper running back to base, and you see the graph and you go, why is there two? And why is this one falling back? Yeah, I tend to agree. But hang on. It was the same stock footage over and over again. See, we know that. But that doesn't make a show bad, right? I mean, it's like one of those things you just accept it, because in the end, they edit all these bits together and it kind of works, and you get the point across. So there's a space scene battle. That's bad English. Space battle scene. And you're thinking, well, what other TV show did that at the time? And I don't think any of them did. Right, to that extent. No. I mean, they were really cool looking bits, even though we did see the footage over and over again. But I think if the core stories had have been strong, you're not going to not watch the show because I'm sick of seeing the same visual effects shot. And I agree with you. I think as a kid, you just sort of let it slide. You go, it just looked good, and it did look good. And that's the thing I think a lot of people forget. Some of those visual shots of the Silent Raiders and the Vipers, they look freaking grouse, even surpassing even some of the Star Wars shots. So I can't. You can focus on that, but that's not the right thing to focus on. I think just the characters and the stories that are most important. Hang on. Sorry, hang on. I'll get this in. We'd like to have seen Richard Hatch's remake. He was trying to do that in the 1990s. That you did do a trailer for it. By then, the damage was long done. It was never going to come back. Sorry, dude, go for it.
Yeah. Well, what you were saying about the story, I think the story arc stuff with the Cylons, even as a kid, I preferred the Cylon episode to the Nomad Plainsman episode, or when they find like a different alien race. It was one of those things where if they had sat down at the beginning beyond the pilot and mapped out maybe a 5-year plan of where it was going to go and what was going to happen, I think they ran out of ideas really fast with Galactica.
Well, as we know, I mean, as was mentioned by Shane earlier, it had a very limited premise, but the remake series had the same present premise, and that lasted for 5 years. So clearly that wasn't a limiting factor. And but of course, 30 years after the fact, things change. So you do wonder what they could have done, or whether they just said it's in the too hard basket. We just can't work with what we've got. And of course, as we've mentioned, the cost would have been an issue because they had to build everything, all the sets, and of course all the costumes. Nothing was off the rack, and it was a bit unfortunate. But if you look at Battlestar now and you take you remember when it was made, it's easy to think that it's like, had this thing continued, it could have just been like legendary, magnificent television for sci-fi fans.
I'm pretty sure it was the biggest rated sort of movie of the week when it came out, and it beat I beat at the time Kolchak, the Night Stalker, but it really actually plummeted in the ratings really fast. And I don't get this with executives in America. There's this thing about the Friday night death slot, because everyone goes out Friday night, so no one stays home and watches TV, and they get a show that does amazingly well, and they think, oh, we found a show that can survive Friday night. They put it in Friday night and it just dies. And it's happened to science fiction show after science fiction show, and it's one of the things I'm pretty sure happened to Galactica. By the end of it, the ratings were the issue while it was cancelled.
Well, the other thing too is also, of course, science fiction it ramped right up in 1977 because of Star Wars. So you would have thought, well, we can't compete with that in the cinematic level, even though they made Battlestar the movie from the pilot episode, and Mission Galactica a
Yeah.
similar thing. But on television, there was nothing against it really. That was on the same level. So you would have thought, oh mate, this is a no-brainer. We've got to keep cashing in this, because from then all these other movies started coming out. They had the market cornered. It was a great show. It was just one of those things where you can sit back and look at it and go, yeah, the old what if scenario. Anyway, look, it doesn't really matter. History is as history played it, and but still a lot of fans even today who still remember the show with fondness. And you are right, whoever mentioned earlier, the moment they said, oh, we're going to do a new series called Galactica 1980, and the whole thing was complete tripe and just shot its franchise down to the point of death, and that was really, really disappointing.
Well,
so,
you know what? Another series with Maren Jansen and Loretta Spang and Jane Seymour from that era, I'd have watched that for sure.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And yeah, of course, that's right. Buck Rogers was out at the same time. And Buck Rogers is an interesting one. What?
Buck Rogers came after Galactica, and it was so cheap. It was a Glen A. Larson one. They used all the rejected designs from Galactica for Buck Rogers. So Buck Rogers' spaceship and the starships were all Colonial Vipers, but different versions of them. And they were all by Ralph McQuarrie as well.
Yeah, yeah. And there's one other thing that had Battlestar going for it. I mean, the Cylons just look grouse, the chrome suits, and they look really alien. And I thought, as a 10-year-old, you go, mate, that is just blowing my mind. And yeah, so it had a lot of good things, and the designs of all the ships, as we said, the Battlestar itself and the Raiders and the Vipers, and there was a lot of good stuff about it. So unfortunately, it is what it is, and that's sort of the way it goes, which was very, very unfortunate. What do you reckon, Mr. Aaron?
I still think I could have done with a 3 or 4 year run of the original Galactica. It would have been fantastic.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that one. Well, guess what, fans? That's the end of that particular conversation, and we had all the fun and games earlier on. Now we got into something a little bit more serious. I expect half the people who are watching the show to tune out right about now. I know we're behind the 8 ball, right? So this series has been going on for a few years. We're supposed to have talked about it last week, but Aaron wasn't around. And, of course, there's going to be spoiler alerts. I mean, I assume people who've wanted to see this show have actually watched it all. But if you haven't, then you've got nothing to worry about. It's a completely different left field conversation for what we've had for the rest of the evening. The Handmaid's Tale. And the thing about The Handmaid's Tale, for those who have never seen it, is that at the moment you've got the new Doctor Who series that's out, you've got the new Star Wars series that's out, and if you want to see a show that will blow those two out of the water in terms of the writing, the concept, the acting, the directing, and the cinematography, Handmaid's Tale just does it. Completely wipes the floor with them. The downside is it's hard work, it's hard yakka, and it is not fun. And so we're going to have a bit of a chat, because I just finished watching the 5 seasons of The Handmaid's Tale. They're going to be talking about doing a 6th season that comes out next year, which I think is the final one. Aaron and I have never really discussed it in detail. I don't know if people watching us right now have seen it. But Mr. Aaron, Handmaid's Tale, what do you reckon?
Well, I would totally agree. For something that is consistently good, as in, some series, series 3 of Star Trek, it hit its stride and something. Handmaid's Tale is consistently good all the way through. It is so well written from the very first season. And it does that thing where it could get boring if it was the same thing over and over again, but the story progresses, and as it progresses, the location shifts and the characters shift, and it's very organic how it goes through. There's a lot of surprises, but nothing seems forced or nothing seems unrealistic. So it is one of those shows. If you like dystopian futures, it's not really the future, it's now. It is a fantastic series to get into.
So Christy said, don't watch it if you're already depressed. I agree with you. So for those who don't know the premise of the story, due to environmental issues and diseases and whatever, the fertility rates of humanity have plummeted. And so all around the world, there's not enough kids being born. And there's a massive takeover in the US. And what happens is that there's a term for it, when a religious group become a government. It's a theomony or something. Theocracy, thank you. They take over the bulk of America. And the bulk of our story takes place in Boston, right up here. And they enforce a very strict regime across it's called Gilead now, which is the green part. And the idea being that it's following the Sons of Jacob rule, where the men are in control. The women of their wives are submissive, which is actually very similar to real life countries in our world. And some families are allocated what they call handmaids, and the purpose of the handmaid is to actually bear children for Gilead, right? But it's the way they do it, right? Which is kind of insane. So they're effectively enslaved and enforced, and all the handmaids wear red with the winged hats and whatever else. I mean, that's keeping it very, very basic. But ultimately, the women aren't treated very, very well, primarily by the men, but also by other women as well. And there's a caste system in place. So you've got the commanders at the top, their wives below who wear green. You've got the what do you call it, the Marthas who look after the households. You've got the aunts who are in control of the handmaids, and then you've got the handmaids at the bottom. Nasty, nasty stuff. Very intense stuff. But it's got a lot going for it, and it's a kind of story where, as you said, as you get through the series, a lot of very, very interesting and unique things happen, especially when the structure of the entire country, Gilead in this case, because even though they enslave women and they effectively rape them, their fertility rates are really high. So you can argue, well, is the end justifying the means, because they're actually succeeding in the overall goal? It's just the way they're doing it. What do you reckon, dude?
It is interesting because, sort of how Shane has said, you can draw a lot of parallels to what's currently going on in America, with, some of the rights that have been taken away from women, and also, the government sort of wanting to control birth control and fertility and things like that. Now, I don't think it'd ever get as bad as a Handmaid's Tale. One of the things I really like about it is there's a lot of grey areas where some of the heroic good characters do some very, very dark and bad things, and some of the bad characters will often have a moment of humanity where they do something out of character just because it's the right thing to do. My favorite character is probably actually Serena Joy there, who's just because you never know kind of what she's going to do or what's going to happen. She is totally supported and dedicated to the new system, but she actually realizes it makes her life a whole lot worse. And sometimes she will go up against the new system to try and sort of, get some extra rights for women. Women can't read, for example. And because she said, well, we should be able to read the scriptures and the Bible, she gets a finger removed just for suggesting it. It's that kind of hardline theocracy that is really compelling to watch. As you said, a hard watch sometimes as well.
Yeah, so if for people out there, it's difficult because it's the whole religious thing is so strong. Everything is based around God wants this, God wants that, it's this, it's that, and everything is covered off by the religion thing. So where you succeed, it's because God wants you to succeed. When you fail and when you get punished, because that's God's will. And if you're a bit of a sitting on the fence religious person, you might find some of it to be a little bit like, oh, bloody religious people once again. But there could be people, and in the show they have this, where even in other countries they support what's occurring because it's God's will. And it is nasty stuff. So as you said, like even the wives are subjugated. There's things that they can and can't do. And women, as you said, aren't allowed to read, which once again echoes certain countries in this world, and you get punished. And some of the punishments that they dish out to both mainly the handmaids is actually quite nasty. And hanging is a ritual that sort of occur on a regular basis, and even torture and whatever else, and disfigurements and all sort of thing. So Colin said here, he's never watched the series, wanted to look see our review. It is really good. The quality is outstanding, right? But as mentioned at the start, it is depressing. There's like no humor in it at all, and it is hard work, but it is riveting television. Absolutely fantastic.
And
yeah.
one of the things I love in a TV series, I'm sure you've got a slide of her, is villains that are so good because you hate them so much. And there is a particular aunt in this, Aunt Lydia, and she is right up there with Kai Wynn as, piously using religion to just be sadistic and get her own way. And then I guess it's the same character, but Nurse Ratched in One Flew Over the Cuckoo Nest, or even Umbridge in Harry Potter, who is so self-righteous and everything she's doing is for the good, but it's absolutely not. I mean, it is one of those complex, amazing characters. And I don't know if you know this, Dags, we are talking spoilers. At the end of one series, she was killed. It looked like she was killed. She was stabbed and fell downstairs. And there was such an upcry about we love to hate her so much. She was away for a little bit and they brought her back.
Okay, because I was surprised she actually survived that. I'm going to get you to move a little bit to your left too, by the way, if you wouldn't mind straightening yourself up.
Yep.
Yeah, religion and politics in a sci-fi chat. Who would have thunk it? Yeah, well, it is a dystopian future, and
Yeah.
it's one of those things that comes at a thing. It could happen if something was to happen. One of the things that they introduced in the series, because the handmaids effectively are treated quite badly, right? They're like little lower class citizens, and they have a sequence where they end up in Washington, and all the handmaids have got their mouths covered. And you go, and of course, even our handmaids don't know why that's the case. And it's because, and this is just freaky, because they're concerned about the handmaids talking amongst each other, they've actually stapled their mouths shut. That is just freaking ridiculous. So I was like, what is the deal with that, dude? It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That was really out there.
It is a series that when you think it's bad, it will then push the boundaries even more. I do think it is interesting because it's things you don't really think about, how the ability for women to read and write can be eliminated in one generation just because they don't teach kids. And it's such good world building where they go to their sort of supermarkets, which are very depleted because the world is is running short of resources, and it doesn't actually have the names of the food on it anymore. It just has big pictures of what's in the cans because men don't do the shopping and women can't read. And I only picked up on that a couple of series in, and I'm like, gee, there's all this subliminal stuff that builds up about how oppressive the whole system is.
So the thing I find interesting is that the whole, if Gilead is run by men, right? It's as simple as that. And if you're a female watching the show, you'd be going, well, that's just bloody typical. The blokes run everything, right? But in this particular universe, because it's the hand of the will of God, whatever, the women support that. They know their place. They accept it and they just deal with it and they take it on board. And of course, you come across characters who absolutely believe the environment that they're in wholeheartedly, right? Now, in the
Yeah.
particular story, a woman, in this case, they all wear green when they're the wives of the commanders. If they end up on their own, like if the commander dies, they're called commanders, by the way, the guys. If the commander dies and the women are single, their whole living structure can just collapse and they've got no place in the world. They've almost got to remarry immediately, regardless whether there's any feelings or relationships. And it's worth noting that what do you call it? Lust and physical attraction is not focused on this at all. So when the commanders perform the ceremony with the handmaids, which is where they have intercourse with them against the handmaid's will, there's not meant to be any feeling. There's no there's no enjoyment. There's nothing like that at all. All that has to be removed. It's purely a ritualistic process.
Ritual.
And yeah, and it's just like, that is just screwed in the head. But that's how they justify saying this is how we procreate and rebuild the population of the earth. So, and of course,
Well,
the
they do.
handmaids themselves. Sorry, the handmaids themselves are actually named after the commanders that they're with. So, yeah, if your commander's name is Fred, as in the case in this story, you'll actually be known as of Fred, and that's all even their identities removed from them, which is really full on.
As my name today is off Aaron, but it's one of those things as well where they do, with there's no romance, and I mean there is no romance. Like, you are rewarded with a wife if you're loyal enough, and they do sort of a marriage ceremony, and it's more like one of those mass weddings where Nick, one of the characters, is given a wife, and they all come in veiled. And he's just hoping they're sort of pretty and someone he'll like. And of course, they remove the veil, and she looks about 14. So he's just very disappointed by the whole situation. But the one thing I don't think we've talked about, the handmaidens become handmaidens because they're fertile, but because they are classed as sinners. So if this character Emily, for example, was in a same-sex relationship when the laws all changed, so she became known as a gender traitor, and her partner managed to get out of America, and she was made a handmaiden. And unmarried women with children become handmaidens. And it is one of those things where the hypocrisy is incredible, because they say it's all for what God wants, but none of the commanders or the people in charge are actually living any of the rules themselves that they say. And that's what I do like, where some of the commanders that have a conscience, they don't try and fight the system because they can't. It's so entrenched, but they might be the ones that don't participate in the ceremony or try to help and get people out and things like that. So it is that sort of almost a World War thing where they're smuggling Jews out, but it's more they're smuggling handmaidens out and women and children out of this terrible, oppressive society.
Christy said, it is similar to the feudal system. Men run everything and women are disposable. That's true. But don't forget the women, especially the aunts, are just as evil, if you will, as the men. I mean, you have sequences with the aunts who control the handmaids. I'm more than happy to suggest, cutting off limbs and body parts and whatever as punishment. And it's like it's nothing for them. And so some of the women are just as bad as some of the men. Colin said, can't the commander's wives have children? Yes, they can if they do. If you end up being pregnant, you're treated like a queen, if you will. And that's one of the reasons why some handmaids, when they do get pregnant, they get treated really, really well. But of course, the moment you've had the kid and you've weaned the kid off, breastfeeding, whatever else, they take the kid off you. It's handed over to the family. And from day one, the kid belongs to the family and you get reassigned to another family and the process starts again. Sorry, go for it, dude.
The reason that there are handmaidens is because most of the wives can't have children. It is rare for a wife to have children. What was I going to say? I forgot what I was going to say, so just move on. No problem.
That's okay. So, and as part of the ceremony for the handmaids, 3 days every month when they're in their fertile, they get there's a ritualistic rape, which the wife takes part in. So that's her sitting up the top of the screen. So they're well aware of everything that's occurring, and it's all part of the greater good of procreating children for the country. And yes, as we mentioned earlier, punishment for the handmaids is quite nasty. So, and a lot of it you actually see on screen or see the result of it on screen. It's hard work, and that's what happened to America. They destroyed the Abraham Lincoln Memorial, and as we saw earlier on with the Washington Monument, that was turned into a crucifix. And I was like, yeah, righto. So unbelievable.
One of the things I really like about the series is some series are frustrating by what they don't tell you. Doctor Who is frustrating when they don't answer a plot line. Some of the stuff they don't tell you in this, I think, actually builds to the series because they give you little nuggets of information. Originally, you hear about people getting sent to the colonies and you think, well, colonially, they're getting exiled. Then later on, you find out, no, that's not that at all. The colonies, there is some nuclear war or nuclear accident that happened in America. And the only way to clean it up is just basically by shoveling all the nuclear waste up by hand. So if you fail as a handmaiden or you fail as a wife or a Martha, you can be shipped off to the colonies, which originally I was thinking, well, that might be a good thing because you don't get the ritualistic rape every month there, but then you find out they only last in the colonies a few months before they die of radiation poisoning. I mean, you don't know what happened, but you've seen the result. And I think that's really good storytelling, knowing what you can and can't tell.
Well, that's right, because for a lot of people, they're saying, I mean, being a handmaid is bad, but going to the colonies is like the death knell. And there's another thing about the show is not afraid to kill off main characters. People get run over by trains and all sorts of shit and go, freaking hell. And the irony is that in Canada, of course, is like our world, right? It's still normal. But the thing with Canada, even though everybody's free, their fertility rates are really low. Whereas Gilead is saying, well, ours are really high because we're following the word of God, and away they go. So it's one of those scenarios where you can look at it from two different perspectives, and you can say, well, from an audience member's perspective, it goes, yeah, that's really bad. It's terrible what they're doing. It's really horrible. But if you're on a person saying, well, I support what they do because the end result is there. The end result is to pump out the kids, right? And they're doing that, right? Regardless of the process involved and the method involved, they are achieving the goal. They have a higher birth rate than anywhere else in the world. And I'm sure there will be people out there who would say, well, I kind of get it and I support it, even if the people involved are being badly mistreated. It's an interesting one. So, yes, you are right. It was based on the book, and they've actually she's written a sequel to the book in 2019, which they're not incorporating into the TV series, but they're taking ideas from it. And then, yes, there was a movie made about it as well, which is very, very cool. It's a great series, but it's not for the faint-hearted. It is all arc related, so every episode relates to the episode prior. It is hard work. It is not pretty, but it's excellent quality. It's absolutely outstanding. And it will make you scratch your head and go, what the hell is going on with these people? The fact that something bad is happening and that they're supporting it, unbelievable. So, 5 seasons. What do you reckon, Mr. Aaron?
Yep. I would definitely, if you are into sort of the deeper, heavier, well-written dystopian stuff, definitely give this a view. If you've seen the original movie, which came out, was okay and went away in the late 80s, this is a much more developed, better version than that. So if you've seen the movie and not give the TV show a go because you didn't like the movie, I'd give it a second thought. I would be prepared to, have a depressing time though, because it is one of those that is quite repressive, and there is not a lot of letting up on it. Like you kind of go, how can it get worse? Oh, it gets worse. Well, it can't get any
Yes.
worse now. Oh, it gets worse.
Yeah, yep, totally agree with you. But the lead character, June, who's the main handmaid, fantastic storyline, and you can see psychologically the whole thing really screws with her brain big time. So there you go. We wanted to cover that off because, as I said, I just finished watching it. And I thought, well, it is a dystopian thing. Dystopian kind of fits into sci-fi, things like Clockwork Orange and stuff like that. So done and dusted after the big craziness of the early part of the episode. And believe it or not, our time is up. So as always, if you haven't done so already, be sure to check out the Sci-Fi Zone socials. The new stuff coming out all the time. It's all very, very exciting. But ignore that. What you're going to do is get your furry one into Aaron's store to talk more about Heroes of the Empire, mate. Talk about Maxwell Dagmar. I want to know more about that. He sounds like a cool puppy. Forget the saucer Sheila, the saucer chick. I want to find out about Maxwell Dagmar. Why is he so cool? Is that right there, Mr. Aaron?
Let's petition Hasbro to get a character.
I expect an action figure at the very least. So there you go. Yeah,
you can get a double pack of him and Saoirse, and what they do in your bedroom in your spare time is totally up to you.
Just take a leaf out of Spaceballs book, all right? Because that's the way to go. So it's very, very cool. Anyway, that's it for another night. Fantastic. Hope you enjoyed us, guys, googling on about various things. We'll be back next week, obviously. So in the interim, make sure you party hard, rock on, and we'll catch you then. And hopefully with a bit of luck, Aaron will still be back with us next week. There you go.
Smoke them if you got them, guys.
Bye for now. Bye.